So wish everybody a very good evening. This session would run for about an hour or 15 minutes. So we should be comfortably done within 75 minutes. So if you have to plan any activity, etc., so you can plan accordingly. We hope to wrap up by 8:15. We don't want to go beyond that. As I said, some of you are not Jamboree students. So for them, I would like to just start by telling you a little bit about Jamboree. Those of you who are Jamboree students, you already know us. So do be a little patient. So Jamboree, we started in 1993, and we are the oldest and the largest study abroad organization in India. Actually, we used to call ourselves the study abroad organization. That was the time when GMAT, GRE, SAT, these exams used to be accepted only outside India. But of course, in the last couple of decades, it has changed a lot. So we cater to universities, we cater to students who apply using these exams: GMAT, GRE, SAT, TOEFL, and IELTS. So we don't train for the CAT, we don't train for the IIT, JEE. We are primarily focused on these handful of exams, and we have been doing that since 1993. We have 39 physical centers in 22 cities across 4 countries. We also have a very strong digital presence. We deliver our admissions counseling and GMAT coaching online as well as live. Online, by online I mean through pre-recorded videos, and also live. That is why when we went into lockdown in March, on March 22, we were able to transition to online teaching right from day one. Our physical classes moved online right from day one. We did not lose a single day of teaching, right? And we have we have students across the world. As I said, our admissions counseling program is delivered in a primarily online. Some data that we are extremely proud of: about 25% of our students end up scoring 700 or higher. We do get the best GMAT scores in India, and we have been doing so since 1993. Because we have been around for so long, so by default, we have the highest number of 700 plus GMAT scores in India. And so this is a little bit about us. If you want more information about Jamboree, you can always go to our official website, www.jamboreeindia.com. Today's agenda, what we want to accomplish: we'll talk a little bit about the ISB application components. I'm assuming that all of you have ISB as one of your options. Some of you may be applying only to ISB, and some of you are probably thinking of applying to a couple of schools, and ISB is one of them. So we'll talk about the ISB application components. What's the strategy that you should be applying to, that you should be using when applying to ISB? What are the essays? The essays is a very, very important component of. So we'll discuss the essay questions a bit as well, right? With me today, I have a panelist of ISB grads. They also happen to be Jamboree employees. So we have quite a few, ISB grads in our midst. So at the very outset, I would like to request Shivani to introduce herself. Tell us a little bit about yourself, Shivani.
Yeah, hi Osma, and good evening everyone. I'm very happy to be on this platform and connecting with 105 participants in this webinar. So before ISB, I was working in IT companies, to name them IBM and Accenture. These are the 2 companies that I worked with for 4 years. And after that, I decided to do ISB because I wanted to shift my stream. I was not happy just doing IT, which I think a lot of you might also want to do. So after ISB, I got a job with a bank, ICICI Bank, where I served as a technology manager, and I worked there for 1 year. And then again, I wanted to switch my stream. So this time I wanted to work in the education sector, and I joined Jamboree Education, which is one of the biggest study abroad organization. And since then I've been with Jamboree in different roles. I joined them as product manager, and right now I'm serving as subject matter expert. So basically I've helped students decide their universities and point them in the right direction in terms of application assistance, how to face interviews, do trainings for other team members, etc. So that has been my role so far.
So Shivani, the people that you mentor every year, how many of them have made it to ISB?
So every year I have about 15 students who I help with ISB applications, and about 80% of them do get interview calls, and every year I have about 10 students who finally join ISB.
Right. Okay. That's interesting. So thanks, Shivani. Thanks for joining us today. Next, we have Prateek. Prateek, may I request you to introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about you. Prateek, you are on mute. You may want to unmute.
I think that's the problem. So I was trying to say something like this and something was hesitant. In fact, that has been the story of a lot of parts in my career. Anyway, so in short, my name is Prateek Chatterjee. I have been working with Jamboree for almost 2 years now. But before that, I started my career as Shivani did in IT, I guess that's the biggest service provider. But then I spent 4 years, 5 years with TCS. And then, well, I guess why we do MBAs, essentially to either shift the career as Shivani would have, or for career acceleration, which was my thought process initially. And that was all the reason why I took GMAT and then decided to go to ISB. And then I finished my stuff by 2017, got a chance in between to head to Tuck as well for an exchange. So it was kind of very nice. And at the end of it, career acceleration was what it was. So I started working as a manager with another IT consulting firm, Capgemini in Hyderabad. But then after a while, you tend to realize that there are certain things that you want to do, and there are certain things that you have to do. So this gap between what you want to do and what you have to do had to be bridged, and that's why I decided to shift to education, because it kind of works out for me. I speak a lot, so that's a problem. And what's advantageous is that I know a bunch of things about how to deal with GMAT. In fact, I've helped a number of students get into ISB and a bunch of other schools. More importantly, getting a very good GMAT score. In fact, a lot of students come with the idea that they want to get certain GMAT score. So that has been my work, and I think Arjuna and the entire team would know that we keep on working with improving every student's profile to the degree that they can improve, as long as they hit their target score. So that's what I've been working with for most of my time with Jamboree, and that's that. That's the shortest I could finish. Thank you.
Thanks, Prateek. Thanks, Shivani. So the next part I want to talk a little bit is the ISB entry points. What points can you enter ISB? And Shivani, why don't you let us tell us some details about these 3 entry points?
Sure, Asma. So the first program which I would like to talk about is the YLP, which is the Young Leaders Program. So anybody who is in their pre-final year or final year can apply to YLP program. You don't need to have any experience because you're in your pre-final year or final year to apply for YLP. They have stages in which they accept the application. So stage 1 is usually in March, and then August, then October, and then finally you have the interviews, September or October, and then finally you have the interviews. So in the stage 1, where you just put in your application, you just do an essay and just do an essay and fill the application. There you do not require GMAT. GMAT is required in stage 2, and then finally you have the interview. So again, to reiterate, any background, any student can apply provided he or she is in their final year or pre-final year. Then the next entry point to ISB is, so another thing is that YLP is similar to many other deferred MBA programs, which means that even if you get an admit, you will join ISB only after 2 years. Because for ISB PGP program, you require 2 years of work ex, so they will give you an admit in advance, okay? And there will be some mentoring sessions which will go on for 2 years. You even get the opportunity to be on campus for a couple of times, and you will have a mentor, which is again an advantage. ISB does not promise you any job during those 2 years. So I think that gives enough information about YLP. Next, we come to early entry option. In early entry option, anybody with less than 2 years experience can apply. So basically, it's the same application process which PGP students do. But again, this is a deferred admit, which means that you will join ISB only after you complete 2 years of work experience. The application process is very similar. PGP and early entry option, the application process is quite similar. And then finally, you have the PGP. PGP, the first round deadline is 20th September, and the second round deadline they haven't announced yet. And application process, I'm sure you will dwell on in later slides. Anybody with 2+ years experience will qualify for PGP. And remember, this WorkX is counted till the session starts, which is usually in the April. Anything else?
Does anybody have any questions related to these 3 entry points? If you have any question, you can either raise your hand or type in the chat window. We would prefer if you raise your hand. So we'll take 3 questions at this point about these options, right? So please, if you have any question that is not about these 3 options, please don't raise your hands. So Yash, you can unmute yourself. What's your question? Yes, Yash. Okay, Yash seems to have difficulty on unmuting himself. Sanidhya Trehan, what's your question?
Yes, hello, ma'am.
Yeah, hi.
Ma'am, I am a design student and I'll graduate next year, 2021. Hello.
Yeah, we can hear you.
So, am I eligible to apply for the YLP or the EEO now?
Shivani, you want to take that?
So when do you graduate next year, Sanidhya?
In July.
In July, yes, you can apply for the YLP while you will still be in your final year, because as I mentioned, the round ones will be in March for YLP, so you can apply then.
Okay.
Anybody in
Right
final
now,
year can
I am
apply.
in final year.
Yeah, but they will see whether you are still in your final year, so you can apply for the YLP. You'll fit the bill there.
Okay, in March.
Yes.
Okay.
Vivek, what's your question?
Yes, hi. So my question is with regards to the PGP program. So generally, the first round of applications starts in the month of September. So at the time when we are applying for, the applying for the applications, at that time, is it required to have a completed 3 years of work experience, or like how this work experience is being calculated? So at the time of application, should we have 3 years of work experience, or it can be completed with by the time we join the school? How it goes?
Yeah, so the session, as I mentioned, usually starts in April, right? So till April
Yes.
2021, if you have 2 years of work experience, you are eligible for the PGP program. You can apply.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So we'll take this last question. So and then we'll move forward. So Jagadish Huljeri.
Yes, hello.
Yeah, hi.
Yeah, Jagdish here. So I just wanted to ask, does this YLP programs do provide with placements later on?
No, as I mentioned, ISB does not promise you any jobs. Okay, you need to find them yourself, but you will have a mentor in ISB panel. Within ISB, you will have a mentor, and they will give you mentoring sessions where they will also invite you to the campus. So that is the advantage. You will get to meet a lot of people. You will have a good network of people you can utilize, but they do not promise any placements.
Okay, and this is for 2 years, right? YLP.
Yes, for the YLP, yes.
Jagdish, the situation
and
whether you go for PGP or Young Leaders Program, it's the same. The ISB will facilitate things, but they are not going to promise a job.
okay, and is the fees of the YLP same as PGP?
Yes, Because
Yes.
eventually you are joining the same batch. It's the same
Okay.
batch that you are attending ISB.
Okay. Okay. But the PGP gets the placement.
Yes, PGP gets the placement. Yes.
So
Okay.
basically, you can think of YLP as a deferred admission. You get the admission now, and you join the ISB program after 2 years, right? So it's not a new, it's not a brand, it's not a separate program per se. You are just getting to join it a little, after 2 years. Right. So we have another panelist. So thanks, Swati, for joining us. I know you just got free, so thank you for joining us. Swati, please introduce yourself. And I think you may want to rename yourself as well. I think you have joined as Pratik, so you may want to rename yourself. And do tell us a little bit about yourself,
Hey.
about when you got done with your ISB MBA. What were you doing before that, and what have you been doing since?
Hi everyone. I graduated from the Indian School of Business, Hyderabad in batch of 17. And prior to that, I was a student at Jamboree. And I had joined Jamboree with around 10 years of work experience. So it was at a critical juncture in my career that I decided to go for the GMAT. I scored a 710 in my GMAT thanks to my professors at ISB. And I can honestly say that giving the GMAT has been one of the best decisions of my life, because after my year at ISB, I got a fantastic placement. For 2 years, I worked in the media industry and I was able to repay my student loan in the first year itself. And subsequently, I found myself really happy to help other students in verbal questions. And since I would help a lot of students anyhow, when my former professor at Jamboree asked me to come back and formalize the help I am anyway, sort of giving to students, I was more than happy to do it. Currently, I have an independent business as well. And in my free time, I'm more than happy to help students in their verbal section of the GMAT.
Thanks, Swati. So with Swati, it has been like a full cycle for us. She was a student, she did her MBA, she worked, and then she decided to pursue a career in education. So yes, so we have, Swati, we were just starting out. We were discussing about the different points, entry points for students. So I request a panelist to stay on mute as well, so that no background noise comes. All right, so moving on. So these are the application components. When you apply to ISB, these are the things that you should have. A GMAT or GRE score. So earlier ISB used to take only GMAT scores. Now they take GRE scores as well. And as per ISB, they don't differentiate between people who apply with GMAT scores and people who apply with GRE scores. If your medium of instruction is not English, if you have in your bachelor's degree, if you had studied in Hindi medium or any other vernacular medium, then you may need the TOEFL or IELTS, a language test as well, right? But if you have done your bachelor's degree in English medium, then you don't need the TOEFL or IELTS. Some of you are today on the webinar, I see that some of you are not Indian nationals. So, and if you come from a country where the medium of instruction is not English, where your degree was not done in English, you will need the language test. You will have to submit an online application form. It's quite a lengthy, and it takes time. It is not something that you can finish in one sitting, right? So do give yourself enough time to fill out the online application form. The online application form itself has the essays, letters of recommendation. So these are parts of the application. And then finally, once you, after this, the next stage is that you will get an interview call. So the interview call does not go out to everyone. The interview call goes out to students whom ISB shortlist based on these, right? So these are the application components. So in the online application, this is where you will talk about your work experience. This is where you talk about your extracurricular activities, right? So all of the data goes in here. In academics, in ISB, they want to see your class 12th grades also. They give weightage to your bachelor's degree marks as well, right? So all of that is a part of the online application form, right? And then the essays and LORs, of course. So, Pratik, when you were applying to ISB, how much time did you devote for your GMAT preparation, and how much time did you devote for the entire essays, LORs, and online application form part?
So the preparation for me was approximately somewhere between 3 and 4 months for the GMAT prep, and application took me almost 2.5 months to finish. At least that was my part. And for majority of it, if you just look at the application process, because well, GMAT is applicable for any school that you're probably applying for an MBA. The ISB applications, I think I had like 6 or 7 round of reviews about my resume, essays, I think multiple essays as well as a statement of intent and all those things. So it took me almost about 2 months to finish that up.
What was your GMAT prep, GMAT score?
I scored a 750 on the GMAT. That was a while ago. Yeah.
Okay, so how about you, Swati? How much time did you spend on your GMAT preparation, and how much time did you finally end up spending on your online application, the essays and LORs, everything?
Well, I was given a very limited time due to circumstances to prepare for my exam. So in parallel with my preparation, I decided to keep everything else aligned, so that on the last possible date of application, by the time my letters, my essays, my applications, everything else was ready and just the score needed to be submitted, I decided to make it a process in parallel. And it took me, I think, approximately 6 months from start to finish for everything, which I feel is the optimal time for any candidate. If anyone drags their preparation more than 6 months, it's really losing the momentum. And anything less than 2 months seems a bit extreme. I scored a 710 in my GMAT. And so yes, it took me a total of, let's say, 6 months from beginning till application. But yes, I had kept everything going in parallel. I did not wait for the last moment for anything.
Okay, so you ended up probably taking far lesser time than most students, I'm assuming.
I guess the pressure of time was upon me. I had to work in parallel and I had to manage multiple things. So I was aware that I'll not get a chance for multiple attempts. So I decided to sort of keep everything else ready in parallel, and just the GMAT score was pending.
Okay, all right.
That's another way to plan for it and approach it if a candidate has some constraints of time.
Right, right. So, Shivani, how about you? Would you remember? I mean, yours been about 10 years ago. So, would you remember how much time you spent on your GMAT and applications? I think you were on mute, Shivani. We are not able to hear you.
Okay, sorry. So it's been a long time. Yes, I did my MBA in 2010, so 10 years back, 11 years back. So, but I do remember it very clearly. The ISB deadline, as usual, was in September, and I took 3 to 4 months for the GMAT prep, and I was done in July. And after July, it was all application. So two and a half months was all application, and I did finish my application, and I submitted it even before the deadline, because my experience even now is that last minute, if you leave it to the last minute, there are server crashes and all sorts of problems which happen on the last day. So one tip to all applicants are, don't leave to, I mean, even if you are done, just submit it, don't leave it to the last minute.
Right, right. Yes, actually last minute never helps. You should have everything, at least try to, latest you should submit is 2 to 3 days before the deadline. Server crashes, it didn't happen last year, but it does happen once in a while. All right, so moving on. So some strategy now, so when to apply is a big part of the strategy. So if you go to ISB's website itself, you will see them. They have stated what are the advantages of applying in round one. So they have stated that on their website. You can check it out yourself. First is they're saying that 100% scholarships are given only to students who apply in round one. So if you apply in round two, then even if your profile is good enough to get 100% scholarship, you are not, you will not be considered, right? So those of you who are looking forward to scholarships, so there's a massive advantage in applying in round one. Most of the financial aid decisions are made for round one. 50% of the financial aid offers are given to round one applicants, right? So that's a massive advantage. Another thing is that ISB, there's limited seats, unlike other universities and other US universities, rather US or or European, or so they don't have a fixed number of seats concept, but ISB has a fixed number of seats concept, right? And when you apply in round 1, 100% of the seats are available for you. All the seats are available for you, right? But when you apply in the next rounds, round 2 or round 3, then what happens is that those number of seats available for you gets reduced. A lot of admission offers are made for round 1. So if you are thinking of taking a serious shot at ISB, do try to apply by round 1 as much as possible. Okay, so that's one thing. Next part is what part of your profile should you highlight? I mean, whether we like it or not, most students who apply to ISB are engineers, right? So if you are an engineer now, so probably you should not be talking much about your engineering experience in your applications. Talk about something else, something that will set you apart, right? So what part of your profile should you be highlighting? You get to write only 2 essays, and the information that you'll be feeding in the online application form also, you have to be very judicious about what part of your profile you want to highlight, what part of your profile you want the admissions committee to pay attention to. Okay, so and by default it means that you should not be highlighting something in your profile that is not unique. If something makes you a common applicant, then don't talk about that. If you are a male North Indian engineer, then that is not the point you should be talking about. Find something unique in your profile. Maybe the fact that you have a unique hobby is interesting. If you are a software engineer, then instead of talking just about your software engineer blah blah blah, maybe you should talk about any on-site visits that you may have had, right? Or any kind of leadership positions that you may have held. So find those parts of your profile that are unique, that will probably not be that common in the applicant pool. So what to highlight in your profile is extremely important. So Shivani, you deal with students on a day-to-day basis, right? So what are some of the common mistakes that you see students doing, while highlighting their profile? What do you see some of the common mistakes?
So the first thing that I've seen is that it's very difficult for them to understand why they should not write about technical things, because I think working in the technical domain, they get so accustomed to using that language, databases, SQL, and whenever I read essays or resume, I see that sometimes it is full of these terms. And so just think it from an external person's perspective, and have some person who is from non-technical background read it and try to understand it. If they can comprehend it, only then it is a good essay or a good resume. Otherwise, you will have to remove all these terms. Then some other mistakes that I have seen probably is sometimes a small thing which I feel is very important. Okay, they feel that it is non-consequential and will not add any value to the essay. So just to give an example, I had an applicant, this was last year, and she had started a small bookers club in the office. And I thought that this is an interesting point to talk about in the diversity essay. And she was from a regular IT background, and rest of the profile was very regular. So there are small things which you can find in your profile, which you may have done now or before, like last 3-4 years. They should be recent enough. It should not be something which you have done in the school to talk in the diversity essay, because ISB really wants to bring diverse candidates into its class.
Yeah, that is actually a very useful piece of advice. When you, after having written your essay, after having written your application, please make a layman read it. Not your colleague from your software engineering background. Maybe your friend, maybe your parent or sibling, somebody who does not have too much information about the exact work that you did, and that you do rather. And if that person is impressed, if that person thinks that yes, I mean, you are highly accomplished, then that is a good application. So when you are writing your application or your essays, write for somebody who is assume that the reader does not know anything about your work and your industry. So I also see it as jargons a lot, that, industry specific jargons. Every industry has its own jargons. So stay away from those when you are, writing about your accomplishments in your essays. So Shivani, another mistake that I see is that they are somehow not able to like stick to the word limit. No, and then on the day of the day of the deadline, when they upload their essays, they suddenly see that their essays are getting truncated.
Right,
So
right.
for ISB essays, the ISB is going to give you fixed word limits. You have to stick to that word limit. You cannot think that I can exceed by 10% or 2 words I can have extra. You can't. The application system will truncate it. So yes, when you're writing your essays, LORs, make sure that you think them through. Make sure that you stick to the word limit. Another mistake that I usually see students doing is that they don't choose their recommenders wisely. So you need to submit one letter of recommendation. Nowadays they need only one letter of recommendation. So choose your recommender wisely. Your recommenders academic background, their degrees, that none of that matters, right? It's a misconception that if you get a letter of recommendation from an ISB alumnus, you will be given more weightage for your application. That's totally wrong. We have verified that with ISB. ISB is, they are going to give admission to you, not to your recommender, right? So don't think that that you should get a letter of recommendation from an ISB alum. Okay. So as I was saying, one common mistake that students do is that they don't put too much thought, in their recommender. They just think that, okay, let me take it from my immediate boss, or let me take it from my boss's boss, or somebody who is the head of the company, even though you may not have worked with that person on a day-to-day basis. So those are some common mistakes, right? ISB wants letters of recommendation coming in from people with whom you have worked on a day-to-day basis, people who can comment about, how you are as a professional. So Pratik, when you were applying, who did you take your letters of recommendation from? Would you remember?
I actually picked up actually I had two letters to submit. So I picked up one of my senior colleagues and my immediate manager. So I thought these two would give a proper reference, both in terms of how I work in a team versus how I work for the team for a longer stay. But then that was my perspective at that point of time, I guess.
It makes sense, but some students, they take one from their immediate supervisor, the second one from the boss's boss. So that's not a
Yes, I remember that, because in my year, the cycle that I was applying, I know one of the students who was applying alongside me was he's a dog. I don't know. He used to handle these pet shelters, and Mr. Ratan Tata was a major fan of this thing, like sheltering dogs and all that, and he got a letter of recommendation from him. I don't know what happened to that thing, but I seriously think that you need someone approachable for letter of recommendations. But then again, that's one view. Anyway, I'm sorry, I should. That's fine.
So Swati, who were your recommenders?
Hi, I had been very cautious about this, that I did not take a recommendation from my current workplace. Because the fact is that the corporate world in India is kind of political. And even if someone seems to be your best friend at work, they know the implication that when you come back with an MBA degree from a leading B school, you can come back as their boss, or you might come back as their boss's boss. That's the reality of it. So I was very cautious that in my current workplace, I don't take any letters of recommendation. I went to former colleagues, former bosses with whom I had a good equation, and I went to clients. So I was in a marketing and sales role, and I was fortunate that my clients had pretty good experience working with me. If you're in a client interfacing role, the record from a client carries good weightage. So I went to some of my leading clients to give me letters of recommendation. Here's where a student had one time asked me that, ma'am, I work in the procurement department. Can I get a record from a vendor? So I'd please request you be cautious that everyone knows how the balance of power and the balance of money works. If you're in the procurement department, you don't ask your vendors to give you a reco. Your clients can give you a reco, your vendors cannot. I hope everyone's getting the reason why.
Yep. It
Right.
might be
So then
specific that-
in any customer interfacing role, if you can get a client or a customer to give you a reco, that carries good weightage.
Right. Actually, that's a very interesting point, that sometimes when you are in your current job, you may not want to tell your supervisor that you are applying for an MBA. So that
Exactly.
might color your appraisals, that may have an impact on your appraisals and increment. And what if you don't get admission, then what? Right. So sometimes
Exactly. You don't want to burn your bridges.
Right. So sometimes, depending on what kind of jobs you were in, or what kind of corporate environment you are in, so you may have to take that call whether you want to take a letter of recommendation from your current supervisor or not. And if you think that it's not safe, then you can go back to a supervisor who with whom you had worked in your previous job, or maybe someone who was your supervisor in that company but who has now left and is working somewhere else. You can try out all those things. But that's totally dependent on the culture of the company that you are in. Some companies are very open. They don't hold it against their employees if they're applying for MBA, etc. So if you come from that kind of company, no problem. So just, yes, you have to be very cautious about who you take your letters of recommendation from. So Shivani, in your experience, so now that only ISB needs only one letter of recommendation, should students try to submit more, or if that is also not possible, then who is the ideal recommender according to you?
So you can, as Swati has correctly pointed out, I think the best person to go to is your immediate supervisor. But if it is not possible because you don't want to discuss that in your current organization, you can go to the client and you can go to your previous bosses. So because there is only one recommendation you require, I would, if had it with their 2 recommendations, then I would suggest extracurricular. But at this point, one purpose of recommendation is also to validate what you have written in the essays. And that I think your professional advisors would do best.
Right. So that's an interesting, interesting take. So well, the next stage, I think what happens is after you submit your applications, etc., then comes the interview stage. So there, Swati, do you have any tips? Just 3. Let's ask. I'm going to ask each of you for your top 3 tips for the interview, ISB interview. What are your top 3 tips for somebody who is going for an ISB interview?
Well, the first and foremost tip I would say is come across as professional as you can, because sometimes former students of ISB come at the interview table and they interview the next batch. So even if someone looks like they're very young and approachable, don't make the mistake of sounding casual, because you're going to stand in the shoes of a corporate professional and they need to see you in that role. So I'd recommend please dress and conduct yourself as professionally and as formally as it was a job interview. Even though the person across the table might look like your contemporary or even younger than you, don't make the mistake of taking them lightly. You need to speak and conduct yourself very professionally. Needless to say, one has to dress accordingly. And thirdly, I think even Shivani pointed it out quite in a relevant manner, that don't overuse the jargon unless they specifically ask you a very academic question. Try and keep your language approachable to every panelist, because some of them might be from your specific field, some of them may not. So you want to be approachable to all of them, which is why keep it at a, let's say, understandable level of jargon. Now, when I say that come across professionally, I have witnessed interviews where students have been very casual. Another example, I know I haven't met any one of the participants, but then I've seen a lot of students do this. They overuse the word like as a filler word. So instead of just saying straightforward, that I went to army school, Dehradun, they say, like I went to like army school, like Dehradun, like. And I guess, in a normal conversation, it's a way of speaking, but in an interview, it doesn't sound professional. It's very jarring. So I'm just saying you won't be able to overnight change your speaking habits. So right from now, try and be a little conscious about communicating yourself professionally. That's the main thing I'd like to advise everyone over here.
So thanks, Swati. So Shivani, what will be your top 3 tips for anybody who is anybody who would be interviewing with ISB?
Right. So the first thing that I'd like to tell all the candidates is do not cram your answers. Okay. Because if you cram your answers, then in the interview, you will break down. They will ask something which you have not prepared, and then you would not be able to answer. So yes, it is good to do preparation, multiple rounds of preparation, keep the pointers ready, but do not cram them word by word. Second thing that I want to list out here is that they are looking for genuine profiles. So whatever you have written in your resume, whatever you have written in your essays, word by word, you have to be honest with it. I remember one of my students, he was asked, he had worked in an NGO, and they just asked him, give me the contact number of the NGO, the person you reported to the NGO, and they want to make a direct call to that person. And at that point, that person did not had any answer. So whatever you have written in your essays, whatever you have written in your resume, you have to be absolutely honest about it. Third thing that I want to highlight here is that some students extrapolate. Okay, now most students extrapolate, I would say, but it should not be to the point where they are able to dig holes into it. For example, one person who is working as a consultant in a consulting firm, if he writes that I am managing a project, then it is quite unbelievable. So they would grill him or her on that point. So, I mean, you understand what I'm saying. Do not extrapolate it to a point that it doesn't sound convincing. So these are the 3 things that I would like to tell. That's all.
Thanks, Shivani. So coming to you, Prateek. So what would be your top 3 advice for students? I'm assuming that I'm hoping that a lot of today's participants will end up facing the ISB admission panel, interview panel. So what would be your top 3 advice?
I think most of the ground has already been covered by Swati and Shivani, as in I think the professionalism and second being true to the story. I just quickly make a quick note on these 3 things that would be on top of my mind. First, know how to tell a story. You have to come up with a story. So ask yourself probably right now what your story is and what you want to present down the line. It's very important that you convey your kind of story. Second, be consistent. Whatever you've written in your essays, whatever your letter of recommendation may or may not highlight, or other things that you're probably submitting, it should look consistent. That is, they're going to ask you questions based on that. They're going to see how well you've done that. Remember, these people have walked in your shoes for far longer than you have. So these guys know it. And they're supposed to know it. Otherwise, you would not be set against those panelists. And third thing, don't fake it, guys. That's it. At the end of the day, just be true. It's just about who you are, how sincere you are, and how clear you are. That's all. Thank you.
So, and another point that I would like to add is that do ask yourself why you want to do the MBA. Ultimately, your application and your interview, you cannot fake it. So you better start thinking from now. I mean, all of you are on this webinar because you are probably thinking of doing an MBA. Do ask yourself why. You have to convince the interview committee about that. You have to, be convincing in the essays as well. So that's one thing. Next, the point that I like, what Swati mentioned. See, the speaking skills. Don't wait that, okay, let me get the interview call from ISB and then I will start the interview process, the practicing and all of that. That you are not going to change much in a week. So while you are applying for your for ISB, while you are preparing for your GMAT, start interviewing. Start interviewing as in I would say, I mean, what I advise students to do is that ask yourself a question and respond to that and record your answer. See, you will be able to get rid of a lot of these colloquial things like or using Hindi in between. All of these things you'll be able to get rid of on your own. So don't wait to get the interview call, to start your interview preparation. Interviewing is a very, very important skill, right? So do work on that from day one. Don't wait till you wait for the interview call. Very often you will just get 3 to 4 days, maximum 1 week time. So you would not have enough time anywhere. So these are the essay questions for this year, right? So this is the first essay question of this year. Describe with examples the most important personal quality that you possess, which significantly enhances your prospects of being successful as a leader, right? So this question is about you. You have to think about it. You have to link it to your past experiences. Just saying that this quality, I think this is my best quality as a leader, etc., etc., is not enough. You have to substantiate it with an example also, with examples also, that this is a situation where where I displayed this quality. Maybe your most important personal quality is that you are a problem solver. Maybe that you perform well under pressure, or that you have great people skills. So whatever it is, make sure that you have enough examples for that. And remember the word limit. So you cannot just go on and on. Your answers have to be to the point, at the same time impactful. So the essay questions are already out. You can no harm at taking a shot at writing your first draft. No harm at, don't wait like till your GMAT score is available and then let me think about the essays. That usually is not a good idea. The next question is, what are your short-term and long-term career goals? How will the PGP at ISB assist you in achieving your goals? So this is a very, very common common question. Your long-term and short-term career goals have to make sense. You have to do enough research also. You can't say that, let's say you are a financial engineer, you are a software engineer now. So you can't say that I want to do ISB, MBA at ISB, then I want to shift to finance, and my short-term goal is to get into private equity. That's never gonna happen. So do some research also. What are the career paths possible? If you are if you are a software engineer wanting to move to finance, what kind of finance jobs would you get after doing the ISB MBA, right? And whether it is even possible or not. So please do your research. Do your research about the career paths. You cannot say that I want to be a project leader at a consulting firm as a short-term goal, if you just have 2 or 3 years of work experience in the software industry or any engineering industry for that matter. So your long-term and short-term goals essay. This essay, by the way, you will have to write for almost every university that you are going to apply to. You may want to apply to US universities or European or Canadian universities. Almost every university is going to ask you this question. So be very clear about why you want to do the MBA and the long-term and short-term career goals. Even if you don't have anything clear in your mind till now, that's perfectly fine. Do your research. At the university should at least feel that you have done the research. It's not that it should not seem as if you are just doing the MBA for the heck of it, right? Even though that might be the reason. Once I had read an essay from one of my students, the first draft. So he had written that I want to do an MBA because my job is very boring and my manager indulges in office politics. That may be the genuine reason why you want to do the MBA, but that's not what you are going to write in your essay. Okay, so do not wait till the last moment to start work on your essays. The essay topics are already out, and trust me, there are students who have already started working on these essays. The round 1 deadline is September 20th September is the round 1 deadline. You should start working on your essays. You have to write multiple drafts before you end up with the final draft. So Swati, when you were writing your essays, how many drafts did it finally, how many times did you have to rewrite your essay till you arrived at an essay that you were happy with?
Well, minimum 6 times.
Yeah. And how about you, Pratik? Yeah. So Pratik, how many times would you remember?
I think same number. I think I guess 4, 5, 6 times. Yes, that was the number. I think.
And Shivani?
Yeah, it was 4 times that I had to edit my drafts, and it was very different. The final draft was very different from what I had written the first time.
And usually your students who end up getting admission in ISB every year, how many rounds of edits and rewrites do they usually, go for?
3 to 4 is the minimum, I would say. It may take more also for some students, but 3 to 4 essays are in good shape when we do 3 to 4 rounds of edit.
Right, right. So that's where, Jamboree's IGIG program comes into picture to help you with it. You may not have the time or the energy to write every essay 4 times or 6 times. And even if you have done it, then how would you know that that's the best version of your profile? That's the best presentation of your profile. So to help you with that, we have this IGIG program, which we call the ISB Guidance by ISB Grads program. The panelists today, so they are the ISB grads who help students. So they will they will have discussions with you to help you finalize the strategy about what portion of your profile should you be highlighting, what kind of GMAT score you should be targeting. And once you get an interview call, they would help you with the mock interviews as well, right? So this is the ISB, this is Jamboree's IGIG program. This is something that you can use to give yourself a competitive edge. And when it comes to ISB, especially this year, we were talking to ISB admissions committee last week, and they're expecting large numbers of applications purely because the whole coronavirus thing. People are not comfortable going abroad. There's a certain nervousness about going abroad. So ISB is expecting a surge in the numbers of applications. So you may want to do whatever it takes to give yourself an advantage. So if you want us to help you with that, if you want more information about our IGIG program, then you can leave your number in the chat. So please leave your number in the chat if you want more details about this program. Our team will get in touch with you. In the next few days, our team will get in touch with you. So, and in the meantime, if you have any questions, raise your hands. We'll be happy to address your questions. If you don't have any questions, please feel free to leave. Do leave your number in the chat so that we can reach out to you and give you more customized information. Thanks, everyone. All right. So, Aritra Nandi, what's your question?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, first of all, I actually preparing for GMAT this year. So I have joined Jamboree, I think in June. So it's quite evident that I won't be able, take the exam this September, October. So it will take, by November, I will be ready and I will take the exam. So shall I be eligible for this round 2 applications?
Yeah, you should be eligible for round 2. Now,
Okay.
I mean, see, the round 2 deadline has not been announced yet, but usually it is between November 15 and December 1st. So, and you may have been already done with your classes. So if you can just expedite.
No, my classes have not been over. Okay, so
Okay,
it's still on. Okay, so I'm from Kolkata, so my classes are still going on right now. So we have not covered the syllabus yet. And my second question is since I am from a business background, okay, so basically I belong from a business family, and then I graduated from St. Xavier's, and then I went to work for a year in KPMG. After that, I left and get back to my father's business. So I have a year of 4 years of business experience and a year in corporate experience. So 5 years of experience. Okay. So will that help for the application for process?
I mean, there's no red flag here. It seems like a good profile. I mean,
right.
Of course, we need a lot more information about your academics, and it's a whole holistic thing. So if you we'll be happy to speak to you in detail. Just if you leave your number in the chat, and somebody from our team would reach out to you. And
actually, your chat is disabled, so I won't be able to type the number. So it's disabled, showing disabled over here.
No, can you try again?
No, I can see it. It's disabled over here. Now it's okay. Now it's fine. Right.
Yeah, I think it was disabled. Yep. All right.
And like another, can I ask you for one more question?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So basically, I have been hearing this conversation for a long time, and I often heard that people in the interview they're gonna ask you this and that. So do we have to think about it, what they're going to ask? Because all we
I think we've lost him because Ms. Maria.
I think we lost Aritra. So Rishabh, do you have a question?
Hello, am I
Yes.
audible?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, so I have two questions. So as you said that we have to be realistic in our post-MBA goals. So if an engineer who is qualified for CFA L1 wants to switch to finance for a core front-end IB role, will that be a realistic goal to portray to ISB post-MBA?
I didn't catch the last part. So CFA level 1 I heard. What's your academic background in?
My academic background is a chemical engineer. I have 2 years of work ex in engineering, but not in finance. But I want to switch to finance, and hence I want to pursue ISB
Right.
for
See,
a
what
front
you
end finance role. So will that be a realistic goal to portray, provided I have a provided I have a CFA L1 qualification?
see, in finance also now different types of roles, right? So it depends on what kind of finance. So according to ISB, around 50% of the students who get into ISB, they shift industries, they shift domains, right? So definitely it's possible. But just when you say I want to shift to finance, that's quite broad. You have to kind of narrow it down a bit into what kind of finance do you want to get into, etc., etc.
Okay. And my second question would be to Shivani ma'am. She said that we shouldn't extrapolate and not fake in our application. So, and she said that we shouldn't, if a consultant is working on a project, like we shouldn't see that directly, and we might get grilled. So if I was involved in a mega project with a valuation of almost $1 billion, so will that be a good thing to say that that I was lucky enough to work in this project as an engineer, or will it be too extrapolated?
No, if you were involved in a mega project and you were working on some valuation, I think it's a good thing to say. But if you say that I am a consultant and I manage a team of say 50 people, that is an extrapolation. That is something that ISB would not believe. So you have to, there is a very thin line basically that I think somebody who is probably mentoring you or somebody who is from the industry can probably tell you whether you have crossed the line or you have written, what you have written is within convincing limits.
Okay.
So let me like Rishabh, as you said, you were involved. So when you're saying you were involved, then it's not raising any red flags. But if you say I led a team of multi-billion-dollar blah blah, and you have, let's say, only 3 years of work experience or 2 years of work experience, that would become unbelievable. So
Okay.
as long as you stick to the truth, as long as you stick to the facts, you are fine.
Okay. Thank you.
Because even maybe you have a very steep career graph. Maybe in 2 years you were given the responsibility of leading a team in a multi-billion-dollar project. Then yes, I mean, the panel would like question you, cross question you. But if you have actually done that, you will have all the answers.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Anubha Vasishtha.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi. So my question is around the LORs that we need to submit. I mean, we can only submit one now. So on the application, it says there's a section to enter an evaluator's name and contact details. So that is the LOR section, right? I mean, I don't have to physically upload a scanned copy of an LOR. I have to actually share the details of the evaluator.
So you have to give the official email ID and details of your recommender. The recommender would get a system generated email, and the recommender would have to go to that, follow the instructions on that email and submit his letter of with the letter of recommendation on his own. So there is no hard copy or scanned copy involved. It's just that your recommender will have to do those steps. So you
have just through the email itself, because I was thinking of completing my application somewhere around the 18th or the 19th only, because I'm yet to take my GMAT. So would the evaluator have time beyond the 20th to write his answers for the LOR, or how does that work? Or does he have to submit it before the 20th?
No, the moment you enter the recommender's details, the email is generated. So the system does not wait for you to submit the application. The moment you enter his details and save that page, the recommendation page, the email is generated.
And then he has to finish that before the 20th.
Yep, yes.
Got it. Thank you.
Right.
May I say something here? I know I joined the conversation a little behind time, so forgive me, this has been covered. But I request everyone that keep your recommenders prepared.
Yeah.
Okay, don't let it be a last moment thing that, tomorrow the mail is going to go to them and today you tell them, okay, you can expect a mail from me. Give them at least a month's time to, check their schedule and prepare them for it.
Yeah.
So with due consideration to their schedule as well, please give them enough notice to that they can give the best possible recommendation to you. Because if you don't give them enough time, they might just do a hurried job. You don't want that affecting your chances, right? Right.
Also choose somebody, as a recommender, choose somebody who will take it seriously, who is probably not too busy, somebody who will take it seriously, because the online letter of recommendation that your recommender will have to fill, that is not a single one-page thing. It is quite lengthy, right? So there he has to answer lots of questions, write lots of stuff. So do choose somebody, who is willing to do that for you. And as Swati said very rightly, just give the person at least a month's time. Your recommenders are going to be busy people. Give them at least a month's time. So even if your GMAT scores are not there, even if your rest of the online applications you have not fill up the recommendation portion so that the email is generated at least a month before the deadline. Rushikesh Janwar. Rushikesh, can you unmute yourself?
Hello.
Yeah, hi.
Hello, hi. I'm sorry about my last name. It comes out funny most of the times. So regarding my
first, heard it after I spoke it, so it's my bad.
No issues. So my first question: how does the opportunities after ISB differ if one decides to choose a YLP program or an early entry program versus working for a while and then choosing the PGP program?
Do you want to take that, Shivani, maybe?
Sure, Osman. So if you have since you will be joining the same class, you will be attending the same class where other students are also attending with multiple years of work experience. The kind of opportunities that you are getting are absolutely same. There is no difference. But because you are coming with a less work experience, you are coming with 2 years work experience with respect, and some of the students are coming with a 5, 6, 10 years of work experience. The kind of jobs that you will be suitable for will be different. Like for example, I will give you an example. I have in my batch, I had people with lesser experience also, and lot of FMCG companies picked them, preferred them over people who had more years of work experience. The reason was because they wanted to mold them into their own company style, their own style of working, and they want to rotate them in different departments, which was not possible for people who came with multiple years of experience. So there is a pro, there is a con of having more years of work experience. Okay, don't worry about your placement being affected if you have work experience.
Thank you so much. Can I ask another question?
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
So my second question was, are there opportunities that I can expect after ISB for companies beyond India?
Yes, there are placements happening outside India also, international placements happening, but they are fewer in number. I would probably like other panelists to comment on this because they have more recently seen placements happening.
Actually, according to ISB's own data, so we had asked that question. So they say that around the number is not more than 10%.
Okay, thank you. Understand.
Stuti Pandey.
Hello.
Yeah, hi.
Audible, ma'am?
Yes, yes, we can hear you.
Ma'am, my question is to Swati, ma'am. Ma'am, so I'll be an early entry option applicant. So do you think an applicant with like an experience in a startup, which is, not so famous, but like you have a good profile, so would a person who has like experience in a big company have an edge over someone like me who's working at a small startup but has like a good profile?
Well, not solely for the reason of work X will anyone have an edge on you. As Arima ma'am pointed out in the beginning of the session, that there are 5 factors which determine your chances of admission, right? One being your GMAT score, second being your profile, third being your letter of recommendation, fourth being your essay,
Yes, ma'am.
and fifth being your academics. So it's a complete package. All these 5 factors need to be considered in totality. Purely for the purpose of work X, I don't think anyone will have an edge only on those grounds.
Yeah.
A startup experience is considered valuable in today's job market as well, because startups have certain challenges established companies don't. Especially if you've been a part of that early team and your profile shows a good exposure, then you have fair chances. That should not set you in journey.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah. Actually,
take care of all the other factors. Take care of your GMAT score. Take care of everything.
Yes, ma'am.
Pardon me?
Entrepreneurship work experience is actually good. It shows the leadership quality. It shows a lot of good things. So
Actually,
experience is actually and it's considered to be very valuable by any business school, not just ISB. So all the best. Get a good score, Stuti. And being a female candidate also helps. So ISB wants to maintain as much of a gender equality as possible. So we have seen female candidates getting admission with lower scores as compared to the male compatriots. So you may have also seen such cases, Shivani, right?
Right, definitely. You have an edge if you are a female. To be very bland.
Yeah.
For a change.
Yep. Divyanshu Gupta.
Yes, hi. So, am I audible to everyone?
Yes.
Yes. So, there are a couple of questions that I have. The first one being regarding the class diversity point of view. So, considering the program, PGP program has a class strength of around 900 odd students. So, do they have any criteria as to they have to maintain a diversity in the class that around this much proportion of students are to be selected from the PGP program and some percentage from that should be from the Young Leaders program or the third program?
See, YLP is a totally different application procedure.
Hmm.
Right? So that's a totally different procedure. So that will not that will not clash with your the early entry and the PGP. So the ISB does not have any set percentage for that. So when they see a good applicant, somebody who is a good applicant applying for, so they go with that. So they don't have a set percentage that we will have to hire give admission offers to 60% students on PGP. They have no set such things because they charge the same fee from everyone. So they don't have any incentive to fix any percentage.
Okay. Secondly, like I have my current work experience is roughly 5 years, and that too in the IT background. So I've been currently working with Deloitte. From that aspect, being coming from an engineering background and then working in the IT industry, that will that make things difficult for me even if I go on and get a score somewhere around 700, but still being a very common applicant pool, will that have any disadvantage or something that I can do additionally apart from the co-curricular activities that could give me an edge?
Yes, it will be a very common profile. I agree. And we have seen that doctors getting admission with 620 and software engineers not getting admission with 720. We see that every year. Now, having said that, we can't actually club also all software engineers in the same pool. So within software engineers, also there are better ones who have on-site experience, who have client-facing roles. So they are a little better. Maybe you have something else in your profile that is better. Maybe you are academically very bright. You come from really, stellar premier education institutes maybe. So it's a whole profile, but work experience wise, it is, it does not add to the diversity factor if you are a, a computer, like, a software developer, let's say.
Right. I'm getting it. And thirdly, for the letter of recommendation part, like you mentioned, people are a bit skeptical about sharing the letter of recommendation with the people in the firm. But even if the team's pretty supportive about me taking the further step in my career, so is there any particular level that you would suggest me, or level of the employee that you would suggest me to
Your
get?
immediate supervisor.
So even my supervisor, so there are a couple of people above me in the hierarchy whom I directly report to on a regular basis. So would you say it should be the manager, or someone just under the manager could also do?
See, that doesn't actually matter. Anybody who, I mean, pick, if you have 3-4 people who you directly report to. Usually people report to only one person directly, but if in your case you report to 3-4 people, pick the one with whom you have worked for the longest, so that the person can also comment on your growth, maybe. But again, I would not know unless we know some more details about who those 3-4 people are, right? And what kind of projects you have done under each of them, what kind of accomplishments you have had in under each of them, right? So we'll need some more details.
So again, based on your response, it seems like you're saying irrespective of the exact post, though, but get it from someone who can give the best feedback about your work.
And under whom you have the best accomplishments. Sometimes,
Right.
there's somebody who will be willing to like talk you up, will be like able to give you the best possible feedback about you, but there's nothing much that you may have done about them. So then that there's nothing to justify that high praise. So it seems fake, So you have to take those also into consideration. Okay, so moving on, Kaustubh Joshi.
Yes, hi.
Hi.
The query which I have is, I do not have even the average marks in my academics, like in 10th and 12th standard, but I have exceptionally good co-curricular and other leadership skills demonstrated, and also a very good career profile till now. So am I eligible for that, or you directly say like, okay, you are not even eligible, even if you apply you will get rejected?
No, that is in CAT. You need 50%. In ISB, you don't need there is no cutoff per se. We have students who with 41% got at 41% in a bachelor's degree have got admission in ISB. The 42% in a bachelor's degree have got admission. So how many years of work experience do you have?
It is 10 years now.
Oh yeah, with 10 years of work experience, the importance given to your academic record is not going to be that high, because that was way too much in the past,
Okay.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay. We'll just 2 more questions we'll take before ending the session. We are recording this session, and the recording will be sent to you at the email ID that you had used to register for this event. Well, we are taking the 2 questions. In case we have not been able to address your questions, please leave your number in the chat. We'll be happy to speak to you. Ashutosh Joshi.
Yeah, hi.
Hi.
Am I audible?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, so I wanted to ask, so if students that are not from the traditional male engineer background do get a preference from ISB when considering their profile, and additionally, if a person has done things in the company that they're working for, addition to the work, like joining the training team or doing CSR work and getting certifications, does that help or that add to the value proposition that you bring to the college?
It does, of course it does, and everything that you do, it will, how have you added, what have you brought to the table, so that is the question that the in admissions committee would be asking. If you are a working professional, then what have you brought to the table, how have you kind of contributed to the company,
So let's say like I am in the training team. This is my first year with the firm, and I was eligible to join the learning and development team within my first year with the firm. I was also shifted to one of the biggest clients that a firm caters to within 6 months. So I'm in a big four. We are an accounting firm. So I was shifted to the account of one of our biggest clients within 6 months of my career. So will that be considered while
So this is the perfect example of when we were talking about that, in your, when you talk about the accomplishments, you have to avoid industry jargons, right? So now when you told us that within 1 year you got something, within 6 months, so you seem to think that those are accomplishments, but we, the four of us, we have no reference, so that whether it is good or bad, I mean, you should give some more data. I mean, when you finally end up writing your applications, I'm sure it is a pretty good accomplishment, but from the way you have spoken about it, we are not convinced because you have not given us reference points. So if you say, for example, within 6 months, I was given the biggest, don't just say biggest, give some numbers, client. Usually people get such opportunities only after they have spent 2 or 3 years with the company. So unless you give us the reference scales, whether it is us today or the admissions committee later on, or the interview panel later on, you have to give the reference points,
Okay,
so
understood.
I mean, it's a note to, it's a point to everybody also, that whatever is an accomplishment according to you, you have to convey it also to the reader. The other person also should be impressed with the data, but yeah, I thought that I'll use this as an example. But yeah, you seem to have a good work profile, so that should definitely be an advantage. You should now just back it up with a strong GMAT score.
Okay, understood. Thank you.
Right? Okay, all right, thanks. So last question of the day, Anjusha Reddy.
Yeah, hi. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, hi. So I just wanted to ask, what do you think is a good score in GMAT to get the admission into ISB? A very safe score that you would say is?
That's a very loaded question. That actually varies, depends on the rest of your profile. I know it is sounding like a very politically correct statement, but that's actually the truth. It totally depends on your profile. We have seen students getting admission. As I told you, one of my students, he was a WHO doctor. He had a 3 years of work experience in World Health Organization. He got it with 610.
Okay.
So and I also had a student who had a 740 and got a rejection because he messed up the interview. In interview, he spoke like for 15 minutes for the first question, and then there was like, you get a 30-minute interview. If you speak for one question for 15 minutes, you are not going to get that many questions to talk about yourself. So he messed up the interview, right?
Yeah.
So it's a very loaded question. Now, Shivani, you want to take a shot at it?
Yeah, right, Ozma. I think the same. We can't absolutely give you a number right now because we have no information about your profile, and it is highly profile specific. Same with my students. I had students get with 610, 620, and even people with 720, 730 get rejects. So that is the situation right now.
Okay. Also, I wanted to ask, I am an architecture student. I'm in my final year right now. I will be done in the next 1 month. So I want to know how much is me being an architecture student going to add or not add to my application process to apply for ISB?
So
me being from a very unconventional background, yeah.
It's not, I mean, architect is like you bring in that whole the creativity thing, and it's not as common as a CA and then or an engineer. So plus you are a female, so that is always useful, obviously. So you will probably be applying for EEO, from what I understand. Early
yeah.
entry.
Yeah, that's what I'm aiming for.
In your 5th year, you did the 5th year as a project, right? As an internship.
Yeah, I worked for 1 year at a company and I continued full time in the same company.
Okay, all right. So that's a good thing, So get good letters of recommendations and yeah, at this point, get a good GMAT score. I think even though you have low work experience, but you are applying for EEO, I mean early entry thingy, so but still, try to get as high a GMAT score as possible. Work on your interviewing skills. You have, see, people with work experience, they over the years, they do develop the habit of speaking professionally and doing well in interviews. But with students, we sometimes struggle. They haven't had faced too many interviews per se. So you may want to start working on interviewing skills also, side by side with your preparation.
Okay, all right. Thank you so much.
All right. Okay, so everyone, that's all for now. Thanks for joining us. I'm sure some of you may have found some useful information that you can use in your applications. So thanks Shivani, thanks Pratik, thanks Swati for being a part of the panel today. I hope you had fun.
Yeah, thanks Ozma. Thanks for inviting me.
So so we are going to end the session now officially. And if rest of you if you want to talk with us, if you want more information about our ITIG program, please leave your number in the chat. Have a great weekend, everyone.